Hello and welcome to the Untitled Anarchist Seagull channel from Ohio, where some fucked up shit has been happening today, which you may have heard of. I'm going to drop a link in chat to Aaron in the Morning, who does an absolutely amazing job of keeping track of the U.S.'s war against trans people. In Ohio, Governor Mike DeWine had vetoed a law passed by the far-right assholes who dominate the state legislature, thanks to extensive gerrymandering, that was banning trans health care for under 18s. And a couple of days later, DeWine turned around and issued proposed regulations, which, if they come into effect, would ban healthcare for all trans people in the state, basically. Under the and they would also create a list of trans people for the state government to use for purposes. So yeah, just in case, it's fascinating living in this time because you have multiple survival level catastrophes going on in real time at once. You've got a pandemic that we're supposed to just be in collective denial about. Well, there's the genocide in Palestine. Then there's the fact that roughly 68% of the U.S. continental landmass is subject to laws that basically criminalize the existence of trans people in one way or another. And all of this stuff and then you're supposed to just fucking live your life or something like that and hope and trust that the Democrats, if you just get the Democrats in a gerrymandered state where that's basically impossible, our districting lines were ruled unconstitutional repeatedly, and the General Assembly here just says fuck you, we're keeping them, and so we still have them. And the idea is that supposedly if we do it the nice way, then we will prevail, or at least Democrats will win, and that's almost as good, apparently. Because Democrats wouldn't do anything like seriously considering playing Hitler in a World War II reboot over the right to genocide Palestinians, for example. Yeah, they'd never do shit like that. Yeah. Fun fact about Mike DeWine, though, Ohio governor. He is an irredeemable cunt, a complete piece of shit, and his only redeeming quality is that he is, in fact, 100% biodegradable. So that's the thing you know about Mike DeWine. How's everybody doing, chat? I was given some thought. To, the video we were looking at yesterday, with the Prager view, because one of the things that immediately does come to mind when you watch shit like this is, who the hell is it for exactly? And obviously, it's got to be for the youth, really. Because the Utes, that we all know the Utes. There's nothing the Utes like more than when you combine hardcore Zionism with being a big fucking turf. That's why the kids love the J.K. Rowlings and the Glinners. Everyone wants Glinner to show up at their birthday party so they can get a restraining order against him. you know, and it's really interesting because it is just, once again, it's sort of an episode in the death of liberal Zionism. Liberal Zionism is just dying. It's not gone, but it is dying under the weight of its own contradictions, and we're seeing that also in real time, and actually kind of good, actually, because liberal Zionists seriously muddy the waters, because they do this whole thing where it's like, the occupation, the 1967 occupation is completely unacceptable, but 1948 is cool, and we can't relitigate it. And tedious debates over whether Israel lost its innocence. Oh, thank you. I was hoping somebody would catch that. Tedious debates over whether Israel lost its innocence in 1982 or 1967. and this sort of bullshit because Israel's innocence, like the United States' innocence, has died more deaths than Kenny on South Park. I mean, yeah, it's constantly losing its innocence. Like, I mean, like that fucking meme about the myth of Western humanity just died. Like, I didn't realize it was still alive. Like, you've been fucking weekended Bernieing the myth of Western humanity around for, I think, a couple of 100 years now. And nobody notices how floppy it is. You know, they take it to the party, it somehow doesn't successfully drink anything, and it's just all floppy, and everyone's like, wow, you know, the myth of Western humanity is doing really nicely, looking really spry. And then it dies again because the Western humanity goes off and commits another major, large scale atrocity, and everybody sees it. And then it's like, oh shit, we lost our innocence again. It's like, I didn't know you could get it back. How are you regenerating it? What is your innocence, a fucking evil Time Lord? So yeah, yeah. So that's what I've been thinking about because it is so much a PragerU style. All the talking points. It's complaining about wokeness and DEI. I mean, it could have been written by Christopher Rufo and Dennis Prager. And I'm trying to decide, do we want to go back to why the woke are more outraged by pronouns than by Hamas, hosted by four people who are clearly more bothered about the existence of trans people than they are with like the genocide going on at their doorstep. And I mean, and that's another reason I was thinking about like the death of liberal Zionism because usually there's so much attempt like on the part of Israeli propagandists to like present it as some sort of a queer haven or something like that. And these four are just being openly queerphobic, just openly like just acting like the whole idea of there being queer people is somehow problematic and probably the fault of Hamas, I guess. But so we could go back to that. There's plenty left. We've also got. Let me see. This is also from JNS TV, the same Hasbaroids. Do Jews still have a place in American society? Or or we've got their take on the war on Christmas, and I'm kind of low key voting for that. But what's everyone think, chat? Oh, well, I sip my tea, which has finally reached drinking temperature. I think we're gonna look at the war on Christmas. I think Carolyn Glick. That name rings a bell to me, though. Uh, I'm not sure exactly where it rings a bell. I'm gonna look her up. We're gonna find out who is this Carolyn Glick. Just start this out. Israeli conservative journalist and author. She's written for Breitbart. Oh, and Yisrael Hayom, which is another hardline right wing. She's from Texas, of course. She was she was a military lawyer during the first Intifada, and retired as only a captain. So she didn't do very well, actually. Okay, and then of course she went to the Harvard Kennedy School of Government to do a master's in public policy, which is where a lot of the biggest war criminals from the Western Hemisphere go for their finishing school. Okay, so I'm interested. Yeah, let's do it. Okay, we're gonna get into this war on Christmas with Carolyn Glick, the Texan Zionist. Yeehaw. Stones are falling all around me. Children making petrol bombs. Can't take credit for
Hamas
those.
declares war on Christmas and on Christians.
I can't take credit for those lyrics. That is from Now That's What I Call Sectarian, which is a satirical collection of parts of songs satirizing like largely unionist sectarianism in the north of Ireland. Okay, here we go. Some glickbait. We're gonna get some glickbait now.
Hamas declares war on Christmas and on Christians, and more on how.
Oh, well, let me just see. What's the date on this? Because 12 days ago. Okay, so this would have been well into like Israel had already bombed the third oldest church in the world. But of course it's like it's Hamas. Hamas is declaring the war on Christmas.
How that whole settler violence slander is a setup for an Israeli defeat in the war. Coming up on In Focus.
Whoa, wait a second. What did she just say? Also, how's the audio? Is everyone hearing this all okay?
Is a setup for Christians. Hamas declares war on Christmas and on Christians, and more on how that whole settler violence slander is a setup for an Israeli defeat in the war.
Well, okay. I love hearing about an Israeli defeat in the war. Let's. That sounds good. The settler violence slander. See, she's going to be pretending that we don't have fucking reams, miles of foot. We don't have footage of fucking ethnic cleansing by settlers in the West Bank and occupied East Jerusalem. We have mileage, okay? But Carolyn Glick's going to tell us about how that all isn't true.
Coming up on In Focus.
Holy shit. I have to say, they did some really amazing airbrushing on that picture. Like, seriously, look at this picture here. And then we'll go back to when she's live in a second. And, yeah, I mean, if you're going to do that level of makeup for your credit sequence, maybe use that level of, I mean, that's just it's sort of jarring. They don't look like the same person, or it looks like these pictures were taken 30 years apart. I mean, let me just say, I mean, I've got noise reduction on, and partially it's to reduce noise, but also it does also do some amazing smoothing of fine lines, and I don't object to that. So no, I mean, shit, you know, you want to airbrush yourself, go ahead, but it's a bit much. It's like when you look at the queen on the fucking coins, and then you look at the queen on TV, and in the coins, she looks about 40, and on TV, she's dead. I like her better on TV. I don't know, I'm bringing a peculiar energy today. I mean, just the level of, like, I don't know, the level of fucking cumulative, apocalyptic trauma has actually sort of brought up my inner stand-up comedian or some shit. Oh, yeah. Oh, the lighting's almost certainly. Hey, South of Sublime.
Well, I'm recording on December 24th, so Merry Christmas to all of you who are Christians who are celebrating your holy day.
Well, except for the ones in Bethlehem who aren't celebrating this year because they felt it would actually be somehow indecent to be having a big public celebration while their people were being massacred just a few miles away. And Israel marked the occasion, since we're talking about the war at Christmas. On Christmas Eve, Israel actually attacked Bethlehem. So, I mean, obviously, Carolyn Glick, journalist and author, I mean, she's got everything in focus. So, obviously, when she's talking about the war on Christmas, she's talking about this, surely.
Today, I hope you enjoy it with your family and friends and have an important and meaningful holiday. I want to talk to you a little bit now about how
Which, okay, this is another, like, indicator of who this is for. Because this is very clearly, I mean, the audience is not the Jewish community. And the fact that I mean, the way she's immediately just she's using the war against Christmas, which, like, I mean, I really, out of the people who believe that's an actual thing, I feel fairly confident in saying that the percentage of them who are Jewish is probably in the single digits. You know, assuming it's an integer. Okay. Um, this is clearly for, like, fundamentalist Christians. This is clearly for the same audience that watches PragerU, I think. That watches PragerU unironically. That doesn't hate watching it like I do.
Hamas, which is fighting Israel here in the Holy Land, is waging war on Christmas around the world and also here at home. So first of all,
Wow, Hamas is all around the world? I mean, this is another one of these, like, bullshit things they're doing. They're trying to turn Hamas into Spectre. Okay. This idea that, like, all the protests against the genocide, they're all Hamas. Like, who the fuck buys this?
around the world, here, I'm just going to give you videos right now you can see.
Okay, good. We're gonna see that these are actually all these protests that are, often have significant Jewish participation. That they're actually secretly Hamas. We're finally gonna get the video evidence
Of Hamas supporters in New York, in
Yeah. No sign of Hamas support there.
Melbourne.
Wait. Okay. So if you wave a Palestinian flag, that means you support one of numerous Palestinian factions. I mean, let's just remember, Hamas is not, in fact, the only Palestinian faction fighting in Gaza right now. I mean, the reports that are coming out on, like, a daily or weekly basis detail operations by, like, 10 different groups, including 2 different communist groups, the PFLP and the Palestinian Democratic Front. And various other more, like, Islamically inspired groups, and, Hamas is by no means the only group in there. Yeah, I know. It's like, this is just so wild, because if Hamas had that kind of reach, they wouldn't actually be having this conversation right now.
In Ottawa, Canada, Seattle.
Yeah, I mean, notice no evidence that there's absolutely, like, if there was even a single placard that in a bad faith reading could be interpreted and misconstrued as indicating actual support for Hamas as opposed to support for Palestinian people's survival and freedom, she would be showing it. These people would totally be showing it. This JNS, who I'd never heard of until it showed up in my YouTube recommendations recently. But, so, that is the best proof of all that there is none. Like, I mean, I would have also heard of it before now because people like her would be, like, making a meal of it rather than just lying.
Washington.
So what she's saying is that supporting freedom for Palestine is inherently what Hamas, and also anti-Christmas, even though there are a fair number of Palestinian Christians.
Washington, D.C., Detroit, Michigan.
I wonder, Carolyn, could you tell us is there any footage, I wonder, of interviews with the protesters so we can find out what it's about? Because if it's about, if it's actually about supporting Hamas and not, say, opposing the genocide, then that would be a great time. They would, there would be fucking interviews. Because the thing is, you stick a microphone in front of protesters, half of them won't even ask who you are. They will talk. I mean, unfortunately, I have been an example of that, and I'm pretty sure I gave an interview to Spiked, not, unwittingly, naively, although I don't think I gave them any good quotes.
And on and on and on, and cities all over the Western world are upsetting Christmas celebrations in their cities and making it all but impossible for people to enjoy themselves, or in recent weeks when they were lighting Christmas trees, when they were going Christmas shopping.
I wonder if there was something going on that made people decide that they wanted to protest. Tell us about what's going on in Bethlehem, Carolyn Glick.
And now, I think December 22nd, Hamas supporters in New York City put out an ad openly saying,
Notice there's absolutely nothing here. Nothing at all to do with Hamas on here.
We're going to stop traffic in major traffic arteries, the George Washington Bridge, I-95, to stop New Yorkers from celebrating Christmas with...
Yeah, that was clearly the goal. That's why that's why it said on the... See, you can see on the placard, it says, flood the highways to stop New Yorkers celebrating Christmas. Because what we are is characters in a Hallmark Christmas movie. And not, say, people who are concerned with the fucking mass murder that Joe Biden is orchestrating in Gaza.
I-95 to stop New Yorkers from celebrating Christmas with their families. So here they are saying, we are going to upset the Christmas holiday for Christians all over the world, and we're doing it in the name of
You think some of them might be
from
Christians?
the river to the sea. So here we are.
You think some of them might be Christians, actually, Carolyn?
World, and we're doing it in the name of Palestine from the river to the sea. So here we are fighting for the annihilation of the Jewish people and the Jewish state.
Yeah. See, again, Carolyn, and I'm thinking like a pro-Israel propagandist, and I'm sitting here thinking, if I really wanted to make the case that these protests were calling for the annihilation of the Jewish people and the Jewish state, what I'd want to do is I'd want to take some video of some placards saying that, or some interviews with some of these protesters where they say that. Like, some evidence that that's actually what they're doing. Have you got any?
And you might call them collateral damage in our war against the Jews are going to be the Christians whose...
You're literally the regime that you're doing propaganda for is literally bombing churches and fucking convents right now.
Holiest day of the year, we are going to upset, and we're going to make everybody miserable and sad. I think one of the more effective videos that I've seen recently is one from Ohio, Canada. Ohio, Canada, from Ottawa, Canada, the capital.
Shit, I wish Ohio was in Canada at times like this.
Of Canada, where they start crowding around Santa Claus and scaring all the little kids who wanted to sit on Santa Claus's lap at the shopping centers.
And then, except the little kids don't look scared. Like, the little kids do not look scared at all, actually.
I think it's important, obviously, if you want to protest.
I mean, look at the tiny little couple of seconds she shows of any of these things. And this was the same when we were looking at PragerView, and they had some, and they were also doing this war on Christmas bullshit, and they also were only showing like a second and a half. Yeah, I mean, being inconvenient is actually... If your protest isn't disruptive, then you basically aren't going to achieve anything. What gets me about Caroline Glick is that her name is Yiddish for happiness and luck, and she just looks miserable as fuck.
Or thousands of miles away to frighten small children when they're trying to celebrate their holiday by engaging in some of the traditional activities that precede it, including sitting on Santa's lap at shopping malls. So,
Yes, the millennial Christian tradition of sitting at on Santa's lap at shopping malls. You gonna tell us about what they're doing for Christmas this year in Bethlehem, though? Because last I heard, if there's one place where Christmas is kind of a big deal, that it's Bethlehem. So why don't you talk about what's going on there? Maybe I mean actually, or you could. There was a really impressive sermon from a Palestinian minister in Bethlehem, and like that is like the first time and possibly the only time I will ever describe a sermon by a minister as impressive, I think, in my life. Um, Specifically calling out this idea that you should that people are just sort of acting as if nothing is going on, and having Christmas as usual when there's literal genocide going on in the place that made Christmas. Yeah, 3 seconds at the outside.
that's what they were doing. And that's not surprising because Hamas and Islamists generally, but Hamas, Palestinian Authority, the Palestinian.
Oh, wait. You see what you just did there? First of all, I mean, there's so many levels of bullshit. Because first, we have the idea that all these protesters are Hamas. All these protesters are Hamas. And then she just sort of folds that in to Israel's Palestinian Authority, which we're supposed to forget is not an independent body. It is literally a body that is subordinate to the Israeli government. They can't do shit without Israeli permission. Under the Oslo Accords, the main thing Israel's Palestinian Authority is responsible for is providing security for the illegal West Bank settlements.
Palestinians have been waging a war on Christians for many, many, many years.
Some of the Palestinians are Christians, though, Carolyn. You know that, right?
Bethlehem, the site of Jesus' birth, they canceled Christmas celebrations this year.
Yeah, did they give a statement on why they canceled Christmas celebrations? Because I feel like I read something.
Solidarity with the jihadists in Gaza who have decimated the Christian population of Gaza since they took over in 2007. And by the way, it had already been decimated by Yasser Arafat and the Palestinian Authority since the
I mean, this is just a fucking gishgalop. And yes, I know it's not supposed to be pronounced that way. I like to say gishgalop. I like it to have the cadence of Gilgamesh.
Palestinian Authority was established in 1994 in Gaza Strip. So
yeah, I mean, everything was wonderful for Palestinian Christians until then, you see.
And if we just take Bethlehem as a case study, we can see that when Israel was established in 1948, 90% of the population of Bethlehem was Christian.
Okay. I just want to fact check this. Okay, so when... Let's see. Okay. So, a big part, what they're not mentioning here, is that a big part of why the demographics changed is that there was this thing called the Nakba. And the result of the Nakba was that a whole lot of Palestinians had to find a place to be. And a lot of them found places to be in the general surroundings of Bethlehem. And so the demographics shifted. She's trying to make this seem like the evil Palestinians were specifically kicking out Christians, which is something that Israel is actually doing. There is very much, Israel is very specifically targeting Palestinian Christians. They love anti-Semitic white supremacist Christians. They love them. I mean, that is one of the really fucked up things about Zionism. It tries to tell us that the most dangerous neighbors we've ever had, white Christians, are our natural allies, and that the people who actually have shown up for us more than once when we needed it, because, again, white Christians happened to us again, they're our mortal enemies. I mean, just completely Darvoing our history. Uh,
When Israel took over from Jordan,
you mean the occupation?
no, and I don't remember what it was in 1967, but when
Ew, that's convenient.
Israel transferred control over Bethlehem to the Palestinian Authority, to the PLO in 1996, Bethlehem was 60% Christian, and a lot of this had to.
Is that actually true? Oh, okay. See, when Israel's Palestinian Authority took over, it extended the boundaries of Bethlehem. It changed the administrative boundaries of the city. So people who were not counted as part of the population of Bethlehem, including the large number of refugee camps that were on the fringes of the city, suddenly became part of the population of Bethlehem. This is just fucking statistical manipulation on a grand scale. Like, this is what she's talking about. The percentage did go down. The percentage went down, but the actual number would not have, because the reason the percentage went down is that the total population went up, because they redrew the boundaries of the fucking city.
To do with the fact that Muslims have much higher birth rates than Christians do. It as
Zionists love to freak out over the fact that Palestinians have babies.
A lot to do with the fact that Christians were already beginning to emigrate.
No, it mostly actually, Carolyn, it mostly has to do with the fact that the boundaries were redrawn.
Out of Bethlehem under the Jordanian occupation from 1949.
Oh, so when Jordan does it, it's an occupation.
To 1967. All the same, it was at 60% in 1990. In 1995, Israel transferred. In 1996, Israel transferred it to Yasser Arafat.
And she also changes the year. I mean, either she doesn't remember it well, or she's trying to make it harder for people to look this up, because the boundary change happened in 1995. That is when, when Oslo happened and Israel's Palestinian Authority became the nominal authority over Bethlehem under the Israeli military. And that is when the boundaries were redrawn, so a bunch of people who had not been counted as part of the population, well, sort of. I mean, what happened was, it was like you had all these refugees. I mean, what she's doing is, I guess you could say it's a sort of passive gerrymandering, because she's taking a change in the actual boundaries of the town, which obviously increased the population, and leaving that out so that she can claim that a drop in the percentage is actually a drop in absolute numbers. That's cute.
And today it stands at around
Wow.
20%. And Christians
We're only 5 minutes into this thing.
repressed. They've been living under constant repression,
By
humiliation,
who?
and assault. And so this comes about in a lot.
Yeah, wait a second. They've been living under constant repression and assault, and Israel has nothing to do with it, apparently. So why doesn't... I mean, Israel's got control over all of that. They're annexing the shit out of it. So, Carolyn, if Israel has nothing to do with, the shitty situation that Palestinian Christians are in, and that is a shitty situation, And if Israel is in effect, sympathizes with them, then why isn't Israel actually being part of the solution there? Could it possibly be, in fact, that the people who are mostly targeting Palestinian Christians and escalating this, as she's saying this 3 weeks ago, massively escalating, not just in Gaza but in the West Bank, are Israeli fascists?
A lot of ways, or it's expressed in a lot of ways. One is that they
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it's a very clever little lie she told.
from being sworn at in the streets. Their houses, their businesses are extorted away from them. They're forced.
Yeah, by whom, Carolyn? I mean, yes, everything she's saying is true, but the passive voice is convenient here because the people who are doing it are her.
Forced to sell, so that when the Palestinian Authority came in 1996, the vast majorities of the stores around Manger Square were owned by Christians, and today they're almost all owned by Muslims. And the vast majority.
Is there? Let me see. No. Not. Shut up, Google. I don't want to. No, I don't want you to use my precise location. I'm just trying to look up a map of the wall. Okay, where is Bethlehem? Hang on, I'm trying to find it on this map because I'm pretty sure the wall actually also surrounds Bethlehem, or more or less surrounds it, meaning that which also it might have an effect on people's economic well-being there. Okay, south of Jerusalem. Here we go. Yeah. Here's the wall. Bethlehem is surrounded by this big fucking wall. You think, Carolyn, that might have a little bit to do with the situation of people there being surrounded by a wall that is actually, I think, twice as high as the Berlin Wall? Hey, KKM.
Majority of the Christians who owned these stores on Manger Square are now living in Latin America. So you've had a massive amount of immigration of Christians from Bethlehem, from the town of Bethlehem, and the surrounding villages of Beit Sachor.
I mean, it's really, what's great about this is she has already acknowledged that actually there is solidarity between the Christian and Muslim communities of the Palestinian population. And she's still trying to make this about supposedly it's the evil Palestinians who are the reason for all of the Christians' problems. Nothing to do with the fact that Israel's been like massively targeting them. Nothing to do with any of that.
And Beit Jala to Latin America, particularly Chile, since 1996. And in fact,
Yeah,
there have
Chile
been
has the largest Palestinian population, one of the largest in the world, actually.
claims that there are more Palestinian Christians from the Bethlehem area in Chile than there are in Bethlehem today. So
That's not surprising because actually in Chile they have a thriving community because they're not surrounded by a big fucking wall. Actually, I mean, Palestinians are all. I mean, you find Palestinians at like all levels of like the Chilean bourgeoisie at this point. They have a Premier League football team called FC Palestino, whose Zionists got really pissed off when they adopted an emblem for their team that was a map of Palestine, because you're not supposed to acknowledge that there's a map, put Palestine on a map.
I mean, and that's one of the reasons, by the way, that Chile has become so incredibly hostile to Israel in recent.
Okay, no. No. First of all, I mean, it's interesting because she's sitting here claiming that the only reason that the Palestinian Christians have anything to complain about is other Palestinians. But then they wouldn't have that problem in Chile, surely, if that is where they're all choosing to go as refugees. They would, but instead you're saying that these Palestinian Christians say the problem is Israel? And she also, the idea that this is a sudden thing, that, there is sudden hostility to Zionism in Chile, is just bullshit. What's happened is, I mean, it is actually, there has been massive popular opposition to Zionism in Chile for a long time, which has a lot to do with the fact that you have a huge Palestinian community, and so that gives a certain perspective on Zionism right there. But also, Israel played a major role as a conduit for U.S. weapons to the dictatorship. And the Zionist organizations that claim to represent the Chilean Jewish community said nothing about it. Lots of fucking Chilean Jews got murdered by the dictatorship using weapons supplied by Israel. And because these organizations are Zionist first, and, when they have to choose between Jews and Israel, they will always choose Israel. They never stood up for any of them. So, I mean, but the thing is, the government has had to gradually at least pretend to take a decent stance. They're trying to tranquilize the population a little bit after the 2019 uprising. So on a few things, at least symbolically, the government has to appear to be doing something decent.
Distant years is because they've had a burgeoning Palestinian community in in Chile. So first of all, you have emigration, you have humiliation, you have extortion of land.
By whom again, Carolyn?
You have forced marriages of Christian girls to Muslim men. So the Christians are living in fear in Bethlehem, but
A fear of whom? Because it sounds from all you're saying like maybe the fear is actually of Zionists and not of other Palestinians. Because it's not like Palestinian Christians weren't the first Palestinians to establish a community in Chile. There were already a lot of Palestinians there to begin with. It is a very well-established community. And you find Palestinians, again, like at all levels of government as well. I mean, Palestinians are very well integrated into the community. And, I mean, so if the Palestinian Christians, if their problem was with other Palestinians, they would want to steer clear of a place that is mostly full of other Palestinians. And if Israel supposedly has nothing to do with the problems of Palestinian Christians, then why isn't Israel stepping in and helping them out? Could it be that maybe that's just not that Israel's actually kind of cool with the predicament of Palestinian Christians? Could it actually be that maybe Israel is doing the things that she's saying in the impersonal voice?
But they're always blaming the Jews. And what's interesting here is that you see a pattern of Christian behavior.
So wait, you're saying that the Christians who are being victimized say it's Israel that's doing the victimizing?
Instance, in 1967, after Israel took
Occupied?
control over Judea and Samaria in the 60s.
Oh yeah, I mean okay. Again, another indication that this is not liberal Zionism. Liberal Zionists will generally say the West Bank. They will acknowledge that there is an occupation because they believe Israel, a lot of them, the younger generation, believe Israel lost its innocence in 1967. And, they're cool with, ending the occupation or the settlements or something like that, as long as, Zionism is maintained in the 1948 borders and Palestinians don't get to come back. But Judea and Samaria is what, hardline right-wing annexationists call it.
Day war, including Bethlehem, the heads of the town, the mayor of the town, Elias Fudge, and others came to Israel and asked to be annexed into the Jewish state along with eastern Jerusalem, and Israel refused. And then in 1995, when Israel was signing the agreement with the PLO to expand the Palestinian Authority, which had been formed the previous year in Jericho in Gaza.
The only thing I've ever actually read by Ed Herman is Manufacturing Consent that he co-wrote with Noam Chomsky.
To the rest of the towns and the villages of Judea and Samaria, Elias Fudge came to Yitzhak Rabin, the prime minister. He was the mayor of Bethlehem, came to Yitzhak Rabin, and he asked that Bethlehem be left outside of the Palestinian Authority. And that.
Well, okay, who is this guy? Because the thing to remember about mayors in Palestine in this period is that they were largely appointed by Israel. They had something, in those days there was something called the village leagues. And the whole point of the village leagues is they were this astroturf bullshit that Israel used to pretend that, as a counterpoint to the PLO, to pretend that the Palestinians had representation in the village leagues, which just happened to go along with whatever Israel was doing. He was the mayor from 1972 to 1997. Okay. Okay, so he was actually connected with U.S. Presbyterian money. Yeah, incidentally, he was Minister of Tourism and Antiquities in the Palestinian Authority. So this idea that he had absolutely nothing to do with Israel's Palestinian Authority is nonsense. He was the only elected Palestinian mayor not deposed by Israeli military authorities for pro-PLO leanings. Yeah, despite his independence from the PLO, he was part of the PLO delegation to the Madrid Conference of 1991 and a close confidant of Yasser Arafat. So yeah, I mean, again, shockingly, she's full of shit. No, she's, she's doing a weird thing here, because the thing is, she clearly, she's also, slagging off Palestinian Christians.
That Israel would continue to administer it under the civil administration, that it would be part of
the civil administration. That is what the military occupation is called. It is not, it sounds like it means it is a civilian administration. What it is an administration of civilians by the army.
So-called Area C, which is controlled by Israel. both from a civil affairs perspective and also from a military affairs perspective. And Rabin said, look, give me a public request, put it in writing and publish that in writing so that I have a formal request from the city of Bethlehem not to be included in the Palestinian Authority. And the mayor refused because he was afraid of being assassinated, rightly.
Oh, well, that's really convenient, isn't it? So you're saying that there's no record of this supposed request from a mayor who was actually very close to the PLO, who was a minister. I mean, not a minister with the top portfolio, but was a minister in the first PLO. I mean, not in the first Palestinian Authority administration, who was a close confidant of Arafat. And you're saying that you don't have any evidence that this guy actually made this request, but you totes, we should just believe you.
So he wouldn't put it in writing, and Bethlehem was included in the Palestinian Authority. In 2003, when Israel was building the security fence to
bueno, ha funcionado para fomentar el racismo, para torturar a la gente, para aterrorizar a la población indígena. En ese sentido ha funcionado, pero lo que pasa es que no es bueno que funcione la weá. Es como decir que el holocausto nazi ha funcionado o no. No, ¿qué importa que funcione la weá si lo que está intentando hacer es el mal, pues, weón? ¿Qué importa, weón?
To protect Jerusalem and its major population centers from Palestinian terrorists, suicide bombers, etc.
Fun fact that wall. First of all, calling it a fence is cute, like as if we don't have like decades now of pictures of the thing. See, I've never heard of a fence that is made of just 12-foot high concrete slabs. That's usually called a wall. Like, I mean, it's just so cute that they still use that bullshit. Like, who the hell? I mean, it's useful because it's kind of a shibboleth. You can use it to sort of tell early on where somebody stands. Because nobody who actually is not just completely full of shit is calling that thing a fence.
The route for the security fence in Bethlehem had initially placed all of the church property on the Palestinian side of the security fence.
Oh, so what you're saying, okay, initially.
And the church elders came to Israel and they asked the Sharon government at the time to please put the church property on the Israeli side of the security fence.
So, wait, okay, so what we're supposed to believe is that these church elders wanted to be denied access to their churches, because putting it on the Israeli side of the wall means Palestinians can't get to it. It literally means that these church elders were asking to be separated from their churches. Because for Palestinians to cross that thing, it is just a hell of checkpoints and permits and all sorts of bullshit. Like, literally, their congregations would not have been able to access it. So, I mean, it is just absolutely absurd to suggest that they wanted a wall between them and their churches.
And Israel reconsidered, and they redrew the security fence so that the majority of church property in Bethlehem is located on the Israeli side of the security fence in order to protect it. So
yeah, to protect it from like the congregations. It's funny because she's just God. This is wild. This is absolutely wild. This is a level of, like, hasbara bullshit that I had not been subjected to in a long time. Because the idea is, like, all the things that Palestinian Christians are complaining about, supposedly they asked for.
So this is what the Christians in Bethlehem are constantly doing when it comes to nuts and bolts. They ask Israel for protection, but when it comes to
protection that comes in the form of stealing their shit.
Propaganda, they immediately join the side of the Muslims and they cast instigate Israel and they join in the delegitimization of Israel.
You see, it almost sounds like this weird contradiction you're setting up is something you just made up. Because why exactly, if they're so keen on being ruled by Israel, a regime that they do not have any say in, if they're so keen in that, why wouldn't they make a public stance of it? Why would they? I mean, because obviously, if Carolyn Glick supposedly knows about these things that she claims to not be making them up, then obviously everybody could find these things out. So if they were playing some sort of like the double game that she's accusing them of, then everybody would already know the game would be up. So, like, what would be the point?
Have groups like Sabeel, which acts as a front organization for Palestinian terrorist groups, as in the name of the church. They do things like Christ at the Checkpoint, where they say if Jesus was alive today, then he would be a Palestinian and he would be stopped by Israeli occupation forces at the roadblocks, et cetera, et cetera. But of course,
No, are you saying that's not true? Are you saying? I mean, are you gonna say that the checkpoints are cool, that they don't cause anybody any problems?
if Jesus was born today, he wouldn't be living in Bethlehem because Jews aren't even allowed to enter Bethlehem, and Jesus was Jewish. He would probably be living in my community of Efrat, which is adjacent to Bethlehem.
Which is to say that she lives in an illegal settlement.
It's the birthplace of King David. But there are no Jews in Bethlehem, and therefore Jesus would not have been born in Bethlehem. He would have been born somewhere else. In fact,
Well, that's a very convenient way to avoid the point they're making about the fact that if you are born in Bethlehem today, you are going to be subjected to all of these fucking apartheid laws, specifically because, as she points out, there are no Jews in Bethlehem. On the other hand, her settlement does not allow anyone but people of demonstrable Jewish descent. Like that, all those settlements, the only people who are not of Jewish descent who are allowed in those settlements are people who are there to do a job and then leave.
the only city in the major Christian city in the Holy Land, except for Jerusalem, but that you're having Christmas celebrations this year is Nazareth, which is inside of Israel proper. And inside of Israel, the Christian
that's also a place where Palestinians were massively ethnically cleansed.
population, as opposed to within the Palestinian Authority, including Gaza, is growing. It's growing all the time because Israel enables freedom of worship, freedom of religion.
No, it doesn't.
Freedom of assembly, freedom of everything.
Yeah, for Palestinians, they totally have freedom of everything. Never mind that there isn't even freedom of the press. No, she doesn't even say it, because there is military censorship of the press, and that isn't a secret. That isn't like some sort of like theory or anything. It's openly acknowledged. The press have to submit stories for approval if they might embarrass the regime.
Yes, it protects the civil rights of all of its citizens, including its Christian citizens, which is why you've seen increased participation of Christian Israelis over the past several years in the IDF and integration into Israeli society. So, because the Christians recognized, particularly after the Arab Spring, that, Israel was the safest port in the storm.
Yeah, this is just wild. Like, we're seeing some of the worst persecution of Christians by Israel in Jerusalem and the West Bank, leaving aside the genocide going on in Gaza. And she's sitting here talking about what a wonderful place that the Zionist regime is to be, like, a Palestinian Christian. And why didn't you have some Palestinian Christians on to tell us how great it is?
And they began increasingly to embrace their Israeli identity as opposed to their Arab identity. Many of them even said they didn't want to be called Arabs on their identity card, but rather because
Yeah, of course not. Because the thing is, if you called an Arab on your identity card, that means that you're on the wrong side of the race laws, and you're not allowed to own land for the most part. There are a lot of parts of the country you're not allowed to even be in.
called Aramaic, and started sending their children to Hebrew language schools because it was safer for them and they had a better chance of getting ahead. So you have the Christian community in Israel growing. You have the
Oh, yeah, that would be in Al Khalil, aka Hebron, where there's an entire the main street is shut down by settlers. So the indigenous population of the city cannot use it. So the only way, like, a lot of people have their houses front onto the street, but they can't use that. They have to go the other way around. Yeah, I wonder why it is safer for Palestinians with Israeli passports to publicly. I mean, just assuming that what she's saying isn't made up, and we've already established that she likes a fib. She likes a bit of a fib now and then for as a treat. Um, yeah, it would be safer to publicly for somebody to publicly pretend to identify with the regime, because the regime will fucking kill you if you don't, if you're a Palestinian
community in the
hell, I mean, actually at this point, Jewish leftists in Israel are getting arrested over the most minor shit too. There's a very popular slogan, Ein Kiddusha Be'ir Kibusha, which rhymes in Hebrew, and it means there is no holiness in an occupied city, referring to Al-Quds, Jerusalem. And, and I remember reading somebody who's talking about that. They'd had that placard up in front of their house for ages. And after October 7th, they got arrested for it. I mean, and there's been lots of that.
Palestinian Authority areas disappearing. And it's not just in Bethlehem. Today, overall, there are only 50,000 Christians living in the Palestinian Authority-ruled areas. There are almost none in Gaza. Again, that community has been completely decimated in the past
By whom?
decade and a half of Hamas rule. And they
Yeah, I mean, I wonder if Gaza had any other problems.
now comprise 1 to 2% of Judea and Samaria. And they used to be 11, 12% overall, and now...
Let's just remember, I mean, again, with the percentages, in an area that is actively being colonized. Because when she says Judea and Samaria, she just means the occupied West Bank. And the thing about that is, of course, those percentages are going to be shifting, because you have all of these far-right assholes from, Brooklyn and London and Toronto, all the worst members of the Jewish communities of those places, the ones that nobody can stand in the community because they're just hardline fascists, and everybody's kind of glad to see them go, and so they go to the West Bank so they can torture Palestinians and get away with it, and so yes, of course the percentages are going down.
So they've been literally decimated. So you look at this, you look at the war on Christmas that we're seeing all over the West today by Hamas's jihadist supporters in the
yeah, she's just gonna keep saying that. She's just gonna keep repeating that with she's provided zero evidence that it's true. Zero. She hasn't not a single pro-Hamas placard. So she just has to, pretend that Free Palestine means that somebody likes Hamas? I mean, it is just wild. So this is the standard of the propaganda. And this is why they're losing the propaganda war, because it's people like this, these jabronis, or it's the motherfuckers in the Israeli military, these glorified cops, who will fuck around and vandalize the homes of people they've ethnically cleansed out of the north of Gaza, and then they upload it on TikTok because it's so hilarious what they're doing to people's homes and robbing their shit and stealing their pets, actually, as well now. and that's supposed to be a heartwarming story that like having killed their families, they take their cats and like rehome them in Israel, and it's like, I mean, like the stuff that Israel puts out to satiate its domestic reactionary population is not doing them any favors, because everybody else can see this shit. And this is how you end up with this level of just low quality propaganda. Like, is it just gonna be her sitting and looking at a laptop and just generally looking kind of sour? Is that all we're gonna get? Like, this
The
is
major
actually,
cities and towns of America, Canada, Australia, England, and other places. And you realize that this is a pattern. And the pattern follows
the pattern is people don't like what you're doing.
the slogan of jihad, which is first we come for the Saturday people, that is the Jews, and next we go to the Sunday people. And we
What? God, I mean, like, who watches this and says, "Oh, that makes sense"? Like, what? Like, who the fuck is watching this and is buying it? I mean, and I think the obsession with trying to find this, like, absolutely tortured line on Palestinian Christians, where supposedly Israel's never done anything to hurt them, and they supposedly low key would love to be ruled by Israel without the right to vote, subject to all sorts of racist laws, and they totally wanted Israel to separate them from their churches, with the apartheid wall. But when you ask them, strangely, they say, yeah, actually, Israel's treating us like shit. I mean, and the only reason I can think that she's doing this is if her target audience is, in fact, like just right wing white supremacist white Christians. Because I don't see anyone else falling for it. I don't see anyone else, like, I mean, it is such a poorly constructed line. It is just like, I mean, you gotta make up your mind. Uh, but I mean, it's like, just in case, considering that Israel has been doing some horrible shit to Christians and that has gotten into the news, right, lately, that she is feeling compelled to create a line of crap that the sort of people who like believe Jim and Tammy Faye Baker will find credible.
you see in Europe, it's really, they do both, right? I mean, they go after Christians.
They.
They beheaded a priest in a church a few years ago in northern France.
It was
The
they.
Cathedral of Notre Dame was destroyed in an electrical fire in November of 2019.
Yeah, it was an electrical fire. Wait, you're now. Wait, she's a Notre Dame truther. I didn't know this was a thing. I'm not entirely surprised on reflection, but I didn't know there was Notre Dame trutherism. That there were people trying to blame the poor state of maintenance of Notre Dame on what the Palestinian world conspiracy.
Very much, by the way, as another monastery in Bethlehem was destroyed in September
By
of
whom?
2015. It was destroyed. The Palestinian Authority said it was an electrical fire, but according to
Oh
the
wow, okay, we're getting her bullshit tell right there.
Archbishop at the
Okay, now I gotta look this up. I've never heard of this. Sounds like bullshit. Let's see what the story is. Okay, well, okay, in 2002, it appears, okay, a firefighter. There was a firefight between Israeli occupation forces and Palestinian resistance in the area of the Church of the Nativity. Okay. So what she's leaving out here. Okay, this is from CNN 2002. The church has been the site of a standoff between Israeli forces raiding the church and Palestinians holed off inside. Israeli forces said they were fired on by Palestinians inside the church and responded with gunfire. Palestinian negotiator Saeb Erekat, who was later revealed in the Palestine papers to be just utterly selling out the Palestinians to Israel, said the fighting and fire broke out when Israeli forces tried to storm the church. Yeah, so no electrical fire. Nobody says it's an electrical fire. If anyone says, wait. And no, yeah, literally nobody says it's an electrical fire. Here's the link of what I'm looking at. So I mean, this is just like this is wild. This is how the Carolyn Glick show rolls. They're
His
just gonna make this shit up.
name is Musa Haj. 2 days before that, before the monastery was burned to the ground in September of 2015.
Wait, no, wait, hang on. Monastery. Okay, this is something different. Okay, so the building. Let's see. Mostly getting far right websites for this. Okay, no, this is a different thing. Yeah, but this is all, like, literally everything I'm finding on this subject comes from far right websites. Like Breitbart. Like, literally, there's, literally the only sources I'm finding on this are, like, Breitbart and fundamentalist Christian websites. Yeah, I'm not finding anything that is, like, remotely credible on here.
It was burgled by Muslims who stole a lot of the precious items that were located there. And then 2 days later, it was burned to the ground. And the Palestinian Authority, as it always did, said, nothing to see here. Everything was fine, just as they did in France.
She really is. She's a Notre Dame truther. Holy fuck.
And so
Wait, I mean,
this is a trend. And obviously,
yeah, it's so funny, like, how you can, like, take two unrelated events and using completely, meaningless commonalities say, oh wow, these things must be related. Like, I mean, Carolyn Glick is full of shit, and also I hurt my ankles. Clearly, this is Carolyn Glick's fault.
raises the issue of why is it then that the Pope is claiming that Israel's attacks in Gaza that killed apparently a few days ago some women in southern Gaza was
Yeah, in a fucking monastery.
a terrorist attack? Why is this?
Well, because Israel surrounded a fucking like church or monastery or convent or something like that, a Catholic church with snipers, and started taking pot shots at the Christians who were holed up in there, hoping that that they would find some kind of safety in there. I wonder if there's something to do. It's something to do with that.
Pope accusing Israel of states terrorism when he knows precisely who it is that Israel's fighting. And part of the answer is simply fear. You know, you have a lot of Christians who are living in Muslim majority lands, not.
No, really. So the idea is that the only reason that the Pope objected to a sniper attack on a Catholic church in Gaza that killed a bunch of unarmed civilian women, the only reason is that he's afraid of Muslims.
That many, actually, because since 9/11 in particular, the Christian communities of most Muslim states have been subjected to massive persecution, and in some cases, as in Iraq, for instance, annihilation.
I wonder who was running, who was trying to control Iraq for the majority of that period.
All the same, rather than stand with Israel, you have leaders of the Catholic Church and of other churches around the world joining the Islamists in attacking Israel and of attacking and of
Yeah, I mean, just because Israel blows up the third oldest church in the world and their snipers attack unarmed civilians hiding in another Catholic church. Well, I mean, like the fucking Catholics, they'll just freak out over anything. Jesus Christ. This
accusing Israel of
this
being
woman.
responsible for the jihad that's being carried out against its people, even though, again, you see that the same
Yeah, I mean, I'm not a fan of this pope. Bergoglio is a very overrated person. He has been refusing to answer subpoenas for years in Argentina over his role in the dictatorship with which he had very close personal relations. I mean, with Jorge Videla and with Admiral Macera, the top people in the dictatorship. The church was heavily involved in trafficking the children of disappeared prisoners, people the dictatorship had murdered. And he has been subpoenaed repeatedly to give evidence about that and to talk about what he knows from his close personal relations with Videla and Macera. And ese weón no dice nada, se niega a comparecer. He refuses to appear and give evidence. So, I mean, honestly, Bergoglio can fuck off. But, I mean, on the other hand, in this case, it's like, I can't fault him for this. That he would, in fact, I would kind of hope that the head of the Catholic Church would kind of care about this sort of thing. It would seem like the sort of thing you would expect the head of a religion to care about when you have like some of the most some of the most important heritage sites of that oldest like heritage sites of that religion being wrecked, and people who are trying to seek shelter inside them. No, I'm not saying Pollo, I'm saying Bergoglio, because his name before he became Papa Francisco was Jorge Bergoglio. Bergoglio. Like, I mean, you would want them to take an interest. I mean, I would also very much like the head of the Catholic Church to take an interest in compensating the women who were used as slave labor in Ireland by the church's Magdalene laundries, for example. Just to name one of many things that the church really needs to answer for. Like, literally until 1996, the church was had these slave laundries where women were and girls were incarcerated for being unwed mothers, and if they tried to escape, the cops, the Gardaí, would bring them back, and they made tons of money, and and the women were treated like absolute shit, and then and the Irish government of the Free State has basically refused to do anything serious to force the church to provide these women with any kind of compensation, and successive popes have just not given a shit. So you like seriously fuck him, but I mean I can't fault him. I can't fault him on this. He's absolutely right to be a bit pissed off about this.
same jihad is being carried out by Hamas's supporters and representatives throughout the Western
By
world.
which she literally means, we've established this now, everyone who supports Palestinian rights. That is what she calls Hamas supporters. Everyone who supports Palestinian rights.
And that really brings us to one of the second subject that I wanted to talk to you about, which is the blood libel against the Jews of Judea and Samaria.
The Jews of Judea and Samaria, they're from fucking Brooklyn. Most of them they're blow-ins, they just got there. Half of them barely speak Hebrew. The Jews of Judea and Samaria, like they've been there all along. Not he just got off the fucking plane, and now she's like acting like they've been there to they drank with Joseph of Arimathea or some shit.
And here,
Or, well, more likely, would have fought him.
I mean, it's a little bit different, but it's related because it's all about whitewashing what's happening.
Yeah, what you're doing is all about whitewashing what's happening. That's very clear. And, like, calling it a blood libel is that's cute, Carolyn. That's very cute. Because we got tons of video footage of this. Oh, I mean, and the Israeli... In fact, the thing is, the reason... one of the reasons that, Israel got so completely caught unawares by the uprising and the prison break on the 7th of October is that they had sent a lot of the people who normally act as guards on the perimeter of the Gaza Strip to provide protection to the pogroms being carried out in Huwara and various other West Bank towns against the Palestinian communities there. I mean, and now she's going to pretend that this isn't going on. And we don't have a whole lot of time left, but I do want to see how she manages that. I mean, I'm guessing it's just by lying. It's not going to be anything particularly sophisticated.
What the Palestinian Authority is doing, what the Palestinian people are doing, what the people who call themselves Palestinians who live...
The people who call themselves Palestinians.
In Gaza, who live in Judea and Samaria, who, as we've shown repeatedly on this show, overwhelmingly support the slaughter, the rape, the
and other things that didn't happen.
The kidnapping, the mutilation.
Also didn't happen. Like, literally, there's no evidence has been provided. And there's a great video. I mean, content warning, because obviously it deals with allegations of sexual assault, but false ones, by the Israeli government, and debunks the New York Times Judith Miller-esque reporting on the subject. Really good deep dive, highly recommended. Let me see. Let me just get this link. Stick this in the chat. I'll also drop it in I'll drop it in the Discord too. Copy link address. Yeah, I mean, it is just so totally paranoid as hell. In fact, I mean, one of the things that, like, French Jews who had thought about, like, moving to Israel and then left said about the place is that the entire culture is racist and reactionary and paranoid.
In southern Israel on October 7th, what are they doing, and what are they claiming that the Jews are doing against them in order to...
No, fuck you. It's not the Jews. They're not claiming that I'm doing it. They're claiming that the fucking reactionary ethno-nationalist faction that you're a part of are doing it. They know the difference. I mean, I think pretty much any Jewish person involved in, like, pro-Palestinian, anti-Zionist activism can attest to the fact, because I've seen this said many, many times, and I can say it from my own experience, that actually, I mean, Palestinians really can tell the difference, and they actually, by and large, love to see Jews getting involved in the struggle for their rights. They actually love to see that there are Jews who are not like these fucking ghouls like Carolyn Glick's with her fucking bullshit shtick. Yeah, their live streams are excellent, and I mean one of the nice features. I mean, they do a great job of covering everything, but one of the things they also do is they will show, with the audio off to avoid censorship, videos from the resistance in Gaza, the various factions, showing their operations against the Israeli ground forces, and the Israeli ground forces getting wrecked. And when you've spent months just watching this just unbelievable level of murder and mayhem being committed by them, I have to say, it's kind of nice to see them getting wrecked.
Justify their actions, justify their genocide. So
their genocide. See,
slander that
now fun fact. This isn't like the first time that somebody who's doing a genocide or justifying a genocide decided that the propaganda line to go with was actually we have to genocide them because hypothetically they would like to genocide us. Um, Heinrich Himmler, of the head of the SS, the guy who was ultimately had ultimate authority over the people who were in charge of the death camps. He gave this speech. It was supposed to be secret, but it got recorded. And it's good that it did because it is some of the best evidence we have of just how well aware, top level people were of exactly what was going on in the camps. But I mean, there's this line that he says in this speech. He says, "We had to kill this race who wanted to kill us." Like literally, the Nazis also used this line that actually the Jews wanted to genocide us. This is just self-defense. That was the line that they used with their people who were directly involved in it in order to help them, like, sort of tranquilize their consciences to the extent that they had them. Like, that is just such old hat.
We've really been hearing, although we've heard so much, like what the Pope said about the IDF, but we've heard so many slanders, so many libels of Israel in the last couple of months all over the Western world, that it's hard to keep track, but...
Well, I mean, maybe you could just show us the videos so we can see. I mean, since the libels have come in the form of live video shot in real time of what's going on.
One of the main sort of leitmotifs of the assault is this allegation of settler violence. This is a major
allegation. I mean, she treats the whole mass rape claim as if that was a fact, and the mutilations as if that's a fact, even though there's literally no evidence of either of them. But yeah, I mean, we have extensive video footage of these settlers attacking Palestinians and kicking them out of their homes. Like, entire villages are being declared closed military zones so the Palestinians can't go back to their homes. And she's going to pretend that these are allegations. Ah, no, entiendo perfectamente a dónde quería ir con la pregunta. Tiene sentido. But, okay. It is time for me to wrap up after that edifying visit to Carolyn Glick, the Texan Zionist ghoul. And let me just say, if you enjoy the stream, I would very much appreciate any support you can give with a tip. That helps me cover my expenses and stuff. The final edit of the Kollontai translation is almost done. I think in about a week and a half I will actually have the final edited version done of the translation. So that's just a cool piece of news. I will be back next week, Friday at 11:30 p.m. U.S. Eastern Time. And let me just give you the tip command here. This is where you can support the stream if you feel so inclined. But if you don't, if you're not in a position to do it, please do not feel bad. Everybody's fucked right now, and I perfectly know, and I would not want anyone to be like feeling compelled to send money to me that they are going to find themselves missing. But if somebody does have something in part with, it is very much appreciated. So, no, absolutely, literally no pressure, and I'm not just saying that. I really don't want you to send me money if you can't part with it. But thank you to everyone who has joined. It's always nice to see a lively chat here. And I look forward to seeing you next week. Hope you enjoyed it, and again, if you're in the Discord, let me just give you that Discord link in case you're not already in there. Because Nightbot gives you an inaccurate link. I will be here, and if you have, like, suggestions for videos that you might be interested in me checking out, then send them to me there. Have a good night.